Hello and welcome back to the channel once again. My name is Andy and today we are on to part 6 of the Classic Cars and Motorsport series using the F1 2017 game. And we're starting to get onto some of the more up-to-date cars now, you could say, bringing in some of the newer rules with the 1998 McLaren Mercedes MP4-13, the star of today's episode. Before we get into the details, as always, once again, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you do enjoy what you're seeing, hit the subscribe button and the like button as well, and leave any comments below. What do you remember about this car from 1998 that took Mika Hakkinen to the World Championship? But the car itself, as I say, is from the 1998 season. Now, there was a lot of changes in 1998 to the rules and regulations. The cars were made narrower. We've seen the introduction of grooved tyres as well, with 3 on the front, 4 on the rear to start with that year. And Mercedes were powering the car, and McLaren obviously designing it, with Adrian Newey getting his first chance to actually fully influence a McLaren design after leaving Williams in 1996 and being put on gardening leave. And between the increased power from the Mercedes engine as well as the design brilliance from Newey, they made the best use of the rules. Newey looked for better mechanical grip from the car, which meant that it was absolutely fantastic on really fast tracks. So, it was really good with the grunt and the aero on there. And when it came to the technical tracks, it wasn't quite as good as the Ferrari. We'll come to that later on, but they had made the best use of the rules going to improve and to move up the field. But one of the main bits about this car is a device, you could say, that they brought in. The introduction of a second brake pedal, a third pedal in the cockpit. So we all know by this stage it's semi-automatic gearboxes, clutches on the steering wheel. So there's only 2 pedals normally in the footwell, your accelerator pedal and your brake pedal. But McLaren had managed to put in a small third pedal. Now many thought it was just a footrest, but it was actually a very clever and very simply designed additional brake pedal that was designed to help brake one of the rear brakes and thus improve the turning. Now at first they had to set it up in the garage, so they had to decide whether it would brake the left rear wheel or the right rear wheel, and that would obviously depend on what kind of corners they had in the track. If there was more left corners, and more likely to use the left wheel for braking, as it helped with the turning. If it was the more right corners, they done it that way. But before long they were able to adjust it where the driver could switch it on a switch on his steering wheel between corners. And when they rocked up at Melbourne for the first race of the year, they were already the favourites. The Silver Arrows, the distinctive West livery as it was by that time, were seen as being the favourites, but no one expected for the 2 drivers of Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard to win the race by lapping the entire field in race 1. They lapped everybody in the first race. That's how dominant they were. In fact, so dominant that due to a radio mix-up, Hakkinen made a pass through the pits, lost the lead to Coulthard, and DC gave him it back towards the end of the race down the pit straight, and it was found out to be due to a gentleman's agreement between the two that whoever got into the first corner first would win the race, as long as they were both in the track. And because of the mix-up, we actually seen it play out in public, whereas without the mix-up, we probably wouldn't have known nothing about it. It caused a bit of controversy in its own right anyway. McLaren would go on, obviously, the win would stand. They would go on and win a good number of the opening races as well, and then the discovery came about for the rear braking. First noticed by some teams, seeing the rear brakes really glowing in corners, which is very rare to see because it is predominantly the front brakes that do the braking. And that got people wondering what was going on, and eventually the FIA banned it because it was seen as being a driver aid and akin to four-wheel drive, which was banned a long time ago. So they had to do away with it, but the car was still so good that it didn't make a difference. It took 9 16 wins, 12 pole positions, 9 fastest laps of the race, and a combined 20 podiums between the drivers in a year that's seen them take the Constructors' Championship, and Mika Hakkinen taking the first of his 2 Drivers' World Championships for the Flying Finn. It did get better during the season in terms of overall spectacle. Ferrari did come back. The removal of the rear brake did help, but there was such was the dominance of the car that it didn't matter. By the time they hit Suzuka, Hakkinen took that win. But you know, this car was obviously a team, shows a great example of a team pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits of what could be seen as being legal to benefit obviously themselves. That's the point of F1, is it's the pinnacle of motorsport, it's the pinnacle of design and technology, and the teams are always looking for ways to exploit that, and McLaren had found it with this very simple device, which ultimately did get banned, but it just shows how clever many people in F1 are to be able to, you know, think of these kind of things, and it's absolutely brilliant. And these are the things within the sport that fascinate me. Things like this, the Brabham fan car from the 70s, ground effect for the Lotus 78. You know, all this kind of stuff is what makes the sport for me. There's another one later on as well when we get to the 2005-2006 Renault as well. They had found a wee loophole too, so we will come to that in time. But this is what makes the sport fascinating for me. It's not just the drivers on the track, it's not just the battles on the track, it's not just the teams fighting for strategic position. It's who can design the best car, who can come up with the best, you know, example of the current rules. And can anyone find the loopholes? Any loopholes, they will eventually get closed off, but who can find it to their advantage? That is the stuff that really I find brilliant and fascinating in the sport, and this car is just a perfect example of a perfect storm. New rules, best implementation of the rules, and this device to improve it so much better as well, at least in the early stages. So absolutely brilliant. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Coulthard years later said it was one of the best cars he drove in his career. If I remember correctly, I'll stand to be corrected on that. I'm thinking of that off memory, but he does remember. You know, I do remember reading something like that, and I'm sure it was this car, the MP4-13, that was the car that he was speaking about as well. Just because of, you could do whatever you wanted with it, and it would go. You know, it just did exactly what you wanted, which is what a driver really wants to have, of course. But that was the brief bits about the car. There is obviously more on the blog. Post it up on the blog. Now you will start seeing these articles as well appearing on another website, ltmsport.com. This is a site that I wrote for last year and stopped for a while due to time constraints. I'm starting to put some things up on it again now. I've started putting up the Classic Series articles with the videos implemented into them. I'm going to catch up with them. You'll be able to read them on there as well, too, with the videos implemented into the article too. So there's going to be more places for you to be able to see and read the content that I put out on a regular basis with these featured articles and videos as well. So do have a check onto that. Follow them on Twitter. I'll put links below once I get on to online to be able to change the description below. I will get that set up into there. But what we're going to do now is the usual 5-lap last to first challenge. It's going to be round Melbourne. Where else would it be best to be, considering they lap the entire field? Can I get myself to the front? Let's find out. So here we are in the grid at Albert Park, awaiting the 5 lights for 5 laps of fun in the McLaren MP4-13, and we're underway. It's a decent start. We've already made a place up, 2 places up there. Going to head down into turn 1. What kind of mess can we expect? Very aggressive AI up the inside there though, and there is contact made. I've got a bit bulked off here as well, so I can't get past. The AI bashing itself away. But we are up to P14, which is decent enough in itself. Down into turn 3, we're going to dive bomb a couple of them, and we are up to 12. So it's been a decent start. But this is where I do need to admit a few parts. First off, from previous videos you might notice that I'm using the T-cam rather than the in-car driver helmet cam. And that's because with the newer the cars get, the harder I find it to see out. And as you see me making a mess of things there, that's another thing to do with this car as well, and why I used the T-cam. It was twitchy. It was very twitchy in high speed corners. It understeered a lot in slow speed corners, and then the back end just wanted to swap itself round. And in real life the car was set up for aero grip more than mechanical. I know I said mechanical in the first part, my mistake. Adrian Newey set it up for more aerodynamic grip over mechanical grip, which meant generally in fast corners it should be really, really good, but I found it twitchy. That could have been me with the setup I was using on the car, but it understeered through the corners quite badly. And I did find a bit of a mini quote in a sense from Coulthard, who had mentioned later on about it being very fast, but it had been understeer through the slow corners, and that was due to that maximisation of the aero grip. That was why this along with the power unit being so powerful, Mercedes now had the most powerful engine this year rather than Renault. And due to that, I mean, it's tracks like Silverstone, which is quite fast. Hockenheim was still obviously going through the forest at that time. Monza and places like that. This car was excellent. It was absolutely fantastic. When you got to the slower tracks, you know, like Hungaroring, places like that, the Ferrari with Schumacher and Irvine came to the front, and that's what kept the season going. Although McLaren got the early dominance as people caught up, and because of that rear brake as well in the early races, the differences between the two cars made for an interesting battle, and it was why it took until Suzuka towards the end of the season before the championships were won. So it was definitely a tricky car for me to drive, and I did need to you're going to notice in a wee moment as well, a couple of times there's a wee break in the video, kind of, so to speak. It's where I've paused the action and my editing skills aren't spot on. That one's not too bad though. There's one later on this which is pretty terrible. I'm quite embarrassed about it, but I've noticed it after recording, so it's like, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. But this car was quick, and another example of how quick it was is most racing fans, most motorsport fans will know about the Goodwood Festival of Speed. About 3 or 4 days now? I'd love to go. I've not been, so it's, you know, a bucket list for me for sure. Hosted by Lord March at Goodwood, and there's a hill climb that obviously goes up as well on the grounds, place where multiple hundreds upon hundreds of cars are. Teams show up with their current cars, test cars. But in 1999, this car, McLaren took this car to Goodwood with their then young test driver Nick Heidfeld. Nick Heidfeld, obviously many years he spent in F1, racing as recently as about 3-4 years ago. Raced for Sauber, Renault, BMW Sauber, many teams he raced for. And he was the McLaren test driver back in the late 90s, and he drove this car up the hill at Goodwood in 1999, and it still, to my understanding, holds the record for going up Goodwood Hill at 41.6 seconds. Now, I believe there's video footage on YouTube about, if you've got a chance to watch it, go see it, because the speed of the car between the walls is phenomenal. And it does show just how good this car was, as you're about to see just how bad my editing skills are. There you go. I'll quite happily point them out, I don't care. But it was definitely an interesting car, and obviously it was then developed in 1999. Ferrari caught up a lot in 1999. It was dive bombing there, sorry, to take P11. And you know, the seasons were fun. You know, this is when I was really watching, for me personally, I started watching F1 92, 93 when I was only about 4 or 5. It's actually one of my earliest life memories. So watching Monaco in 92 with my dad. But by 96, as I mentioned last video, 97, 98, that's when I started really recognising more and more of what was going on, rather than just it was the race. And you know, it was exciting. There was a lot of teams. We had like 20, I think it was 24 car grids at this point. You know, we had McLaren, Ferrari, Benetton was still there, and Williams, who were now just starting to wane off. They were starting to have a bit of a lull period before BMW came along in the 2000s. Jordan, they were still doing pretty well. They would actually win their first race in 1998 with Damon Hill at the chaotic and well remembered Belgium Grand Prix from that year at Spa. Pouring rain, 13 car pile up in the first lap, and Schumacher driving into the back of Coulthard late in the race, which took his wheel off. Schumacher accusing him of trying to kill him, which is quite fun. You've seen me make a mistake just back there, so I've lost a few places myself personally onto the last lap. And it's these kind of cars going back. It's just, I know I keep saying it, but this is why I do these videos, and this is why I enjoy doing them. It's remembering from that time, remembering when there was so much going on. For a UK audience, or a British-based audience, at least most of the time, Murray Walker was commentating, alongside Martin Brundle, and you can't beat Murray. He's just absolutely brilliant. And remembering all of this stuff is what I love doing. So I'm enjoying this. I hope you are as well, watching this video, reading through any of the articles if you are as well. Let me know if you're reading the articles, actually, because I try and add a bit more into them sometimes as well. So let me know if you are reading those too. But I'm enjoying this, and I hope you guys are too. So hit the thumbs up if you are enjoying the videos. But we are coming up to the last lap. You'll notice I've kind of just spoke a wee bit more about the car and rambled a wee bit more in this video, and that's because the race itself, because I was finding it tricky with the car, wasn't the greatest. So I just kind of ignored it almost in that sense. But we're around the last turn now. 13th, worst result I've had so far doing these challenges, but there we are. We are through to the finish. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, the like button, comment below. But until next week, I'll see you again soon. Ta-ra.